Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing to you Final Fantasy XV Pocket Edition HD. I don't think they intended it to rhyme like I just did, because XV is the Roman numeral for 15. I just felt like making a little bit of fun of the way that the series refuses to use actual numbers for its titles when there's been way more than just a final one. Anywho, I want to make a couple disclaimers before I begin. As usual, I actually haven't played a core Final Fantasy title since Dawn of Souls on the Game Boy Advance, and haven't really played any others besides that one, so I am very much a newbie to this series with the exception of the Theatrhythm games on the 3DS. This game was designed with beginners of the Final Fantasy franchise in mind, so thankfully it was really easy for me to get accustomed into the gameplay. Just as a side note, I'm going to say the word easy a lot in this review, so if you want to keep track and say in the comments, dang Paul, you overused that word, feel free, because that's going to be a constant theme of this entire review. Anywho, so I've never actually played the PlayStation 4 version of Final Fantasy 15, but man, that would have been the game that convinced me to get a non-Nintendo system. I followed up on this game religiously when they were talking about it in Game Informer, and I just really wanted one. And even if people would tell me, oh, Paul, the game drags near the end, or it has a disappointing finale, I was just like, I don't care. This looks like taking the best parts of a wilderness trip, but taking out the stuff that I hate, which is, of course, leaving the house. With the Switch version, I can take it anywhere I want, or I can sit in my bed, and I can pretend like I'm experiencing this epic journey, kind of like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which is my favorite book. People would say, no, Paul, the Pocket Edition, it looks terrible. I said, so what? I want to drive in the car. I want to explore. I want to have some fun. But Paul, you don't play Final Fantasy. Nothing could dissuade me. So I bought this on day one, which, mind you, already had a discount of 40% off, so for less than $20, which is actually cheaper than the mobile version that this was based on, I was able to finally play and beat a core Final Fantasy title. So let's talk about it. The first thing you're going to notice is that this game looks awful. You're going to probably look at this for 2 nanoseconds and say, oh my gosh, I'm just not going to play it because of the graphics. To a certain extent, I'd kind of agree with you. And a lot of you are just going to pick up the PS4 version for the graphics alone. However, doing that, you'd miss out on a significant part of what makes Final Fantasy XV so good from a narrative standpoint, and that's it doesn't waste time on pointless details. Sure, near the beginning there are a couple of pointless fetch quests, but after that, you're pretty much just taken straight through the narrative. So if you're not a huge fan of hundreds upon hundreds of side quests and open world objectives and complicated things in the PlayStation 4 version, this is very much a truncated, roughly 10-hour quest if you know what you're doing. And there's only 10 chapters in this mobile version, so you'll get through the main storyline pretty quickly. Not to say that it's a bad story. It's maybe not as epic as, say, some of the other story-driven games that I've reviewed, but it's certainly not a bad one either. This is one of those, the destination is worth the journey. Because as much as the PS4 version was an open world game, this is more of a fairly big world kind of concept. You don't really have interconnected areas, you're sort of in self-contained mini sandboxes, kind of like the Super Mario Odyssey Kingdoms, but more linear. And there are not that many side quests you can do. Like, once you get over the initial couple, where the game's like trying to train you on how to play, pretty much your only options are finding Cactuar statues, finding ingredients for Ignis's recipes. Yes, that line is still in it. I've come up with a new recipe. No, that was not me copying. That was actually my voice. Anyway. And finding buried treasure. Apart from that, this game's main focus is going to be on the storyline, so driving scenes in the car are going to be significantly shortened, the worlds are more truncated, and only the most essential moments of the story are kept in. Now, granted, that left a little bit of confusion for me, having never played the PS4 version. I kept wondering who the heck are the Six, and they were never satisfactorily explained, and to my knowledge, I don't even think they appeared. If they did, the story did a terrible job of conveying it. There were also a few mysteries that were sort of mentioned and then never brought up again, like when what's his name? Pronto said that he was saved by a dog, and then he ended up adopting that dog. We don't really get too much details on how exactly that saved his life. But apart from that, we get the basic gist that these are four men on a journey to reclaim their kingdom and build up Noctis's power so that he can take his rightful place as king of his kingdom after his throne was taken from him. This may seem like a pretty standard plot, and it kind of is once you realize that you're just searching for enough mystical artifacts so that Noctis can be powerful enough to take down the eventual final boss. But the way it's told is what makes it a journey worth experiencing. You're with basically a bunch of dudes for like 90% of the game. And as someone who has been a long family vacation saying, ugh, when am I ever going to stop seeing these same people over and over again, you really feel what they feel. You feel that dread of, ugh, this car ride is dragging on and on. When can we find a decent hotel? When can we actually have some time to catch our breath? All the highs and the lows of traveling are here, with one major exception, and this is one of the few things that probably would have turned me off had I not been so interested in seeing how things would wrap up, and that is that some of the littler details that made Final Fantasy XV special have been removed from this version for no discernible reason that I can think of. First off, when you're driving in the Regalia, while there are still driving scenes, there's only once in the entire game where you're actually required to steer the car. Other than that, the driver will pretty much be on autopilot. Also, you can't change the radio. You either have whatever is fixed in the music at the time, or you have the sound of ambient vehicle noise. So I was really bummed that I couldn't listen to One Winged Angel while I was driving down the highways. Not to mention the driving scenes were like really short. Normally in a game I'd expect that, but in this kind of game where it's simulating this gigantic journey that takes place over a period of several years, that would have been a cool touch of realism to add. And considering that this is the Mobile Edition HD, I would have thought Square Enix would have taken the extra power that the Switch has over the cell phone to maybe add those features back in. As it is, from what I've heard, I could be wrong, please comment on this if I am, the only significant thing they added to the Switch version was HD graphics and the ability to actually freely move Noctis on the battlefield, rather than it just being an auto-battler. Now, speaking of the battle system, this is extremely simple and very easy to get your hands on, even if you haven't played a main Final Fantasy game like yours truly. The battles are not random. You can clearly see the enemies, although you can't really run away from them either. Granted, there are stealth sections, but most of them aren't actually required because the enemies go down so easily. Noctis' moveset is pretty basic at first. You just keep whacking on the Y button to hit the enemies with your sword, or you can press the B button to dodge, and that's pretty much it at first. Eventually, Noctis can learn to parry. He can also do warping, which lets him immediately, jump after an enemy in, the zooming space-time effect. And it really does a great job of making sure that the enemies don't get all over the place and you're stuck with more running around than actually fighting. This also lends itself brilliantly into the boss battles, which I'll get to in a minute. Eventually you can learn more advanced techniques, such as your partners having more moves that you can activate at the right time by pressing the B button. Noctis can also learn how to use magic, etc. Again, most of these are extremely easy to pull off, and the battle system, it's been truncated down a lot from the PlayStation 4 versions, that you basically have the absolute bare minimum, which is attack, dodge, or special. That's pretty much all you need to know, and frankly, I kind of like it. I may not know exactly what has changed, but I don't think I need to. I think this battle system is fun enough, while at the same time not feeling like it's so easy that you won't at least worry that you might die. Granted, I may have only had 2 game overs the whole game, but yet at the same time, what made the battles engaging, besides the whole emotional factor of your friends and the highs and lows of companionship, but also the fact that once the battles progress, they get more epic, and you also have quick time events that make you feel like you're really a part of the action. When you're facing down a giant boss and you're like dodging, like say their giant arms, you're going to be moving the left stick out of the way in sequence. And if you fail, then that's going to make the battle a lot harder. Now, unfortunately, you would think that because this is on the Switch, it would have fixed some of the problems the mobile version had. Unfortunately, from my playtime, that didn't seem to be the case. As of the time of this recording, this game is littered with some absolutely game-breaking glitches. On my first save file, I was in a major battle and was just about to defeat the boss when Noctis got into this weird phase where he would swing his sword, but it couldn't hurt anyone. And then he also couldn't move on his own, so the only thing I could do was dodge. But then it wouldn't let me revive my party members, wouldn't let me pause the game. Well, actually, it did let me pause the game, but it didn't let me, like, use any of my extra tactics. It wouldn't even let me hurt the boss. Then once I turned the game off, then it was fine. Then I booted up another save file, and there would be moments of slowdown, or the game would crash entirely, and it was just awful. This is definitely not the optimal performance way to play the game, but if you can happen to get a glitch-free file, because I think it's going to depend on whichever file you use, as opposed to the game itself, just be prepared to reset the Switch a lot. Which is both a blessing and a curse, because while the game autosaves fairly frequently, you don't have the option of manual saving. So you won't be able to resume at a very specific point in the game. You can only save at, say, dramatic events, or if you've just finished a side quest, stuff like that. So yeah, they may have taken out the more interesting aspects of Final Fantasy 15, like the classic Final Fantasy tunes while you're driving the car and going into a diner to hit up a ton of side quests. But the main story is here, the voice acting is all here, and a lot of it's really spectacular too. And the music, for the most part, has been perfectly preserved. This has to be some of the most epic music I have ever heard that was originally designed for a PS4 that was eventually redesigned for a mobile phone. And this is like one of those, you would want to go to a live orchestra to hear some of these songs performed, especially the boss battle themes. The game is very memorable, and if you know what you're doing, it's only about 10 hours long. It's a very easy game, though. You're probably not going to struggle very much with, like, anything. In fact, I never even had to use a walkthrough, and since I've never played a Final Fantasy game that's either saying I'm good, or this game just wants you to be able to beat it, as there's constantly a circle below Noctis' feet. Your map will even tell you exactly where you need to go. So say you do get lost, if you eventually follow the map, you'll be fine. Now, as far as customization, this game's system of upgrading your characters is also very easy to grasp. You have what's called an ascension point tree, or a skill tree as I like to call it, because I love Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. And depending on how many points you have, you can gradually unlock more abilities for your party members. This is extremely streamlined from what I've heard from the PS4 version, and it works really well because it makes you feel like you're gradually having more options in battle. Because who wants to just mash one button the entire time to win? Eventually you're going to want to start using advanced strategies. And I love it when the game forces you to think outside the box. There are moments late in the game where, say, you might be stripped of your weapons and have to find another way to fight. Or you might get to control the super amazing vehicle. Either way, Final Fantasy 15 may be kinda dull for some players when it comes to the moment-to-moment getting to the action moments. But man, once they get to the action, it's just basically a thrill ride from there, with the game hardly ever pausing once you get past the first chapter and a half. There are some truly intense moments, which are unfortunately slightly damaged by the fact that the characters don't really change facial expressions like ever. In fact, they don't even blink. So when Noctis is crying, he kind of just looks the same as he does when he's happy, which made it so that I probably would have been sobbing at certain tragic deaths, but I didn't. I was just like, I can't take this seriously when he's looking like a puppet that had its face painted just the other day. So, in the end of the day, Final Fantasy 15, as far as what you're going to play it on, is going to be a matter of choice. Do you want to have the hyper-realistic hair that's so real you'd think that it was a live-action film version that has more padding and more open world, or are you going to take this truncated version that is story first, game later approach? Either way, you're in for a really great time with only a handful of truly slow, bogging moments. I think this is definitely worth a buy, especially if you can get it on sale like I did, because then you're like, whoa, a game this awesome for the price of, say, an ancient Super Nintendo game? Count me in! And the Switch version being portable means that you've got an option to take this grand adventure wherever you go. And you can also replay the chapters if you like your favorite moments. So while this game may not have an in-game soundtrack player, which you know I love talking about in my reviews, it does let you relive the famous moments whenever you want, which is super cool. So with that, I give this game a pretty high recommendation. So thank you very much for watching, my friends. Let me know what some of your favorite moments were from the PS4 version, because I would love to look up a comparison one of these days. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and make sure you've got a good driver. Bye!